Come join with me as we journey back to our beautiful homeland, to the villages in the Böhmerwald where our German Bohemian grandparents, our great-grandparents, were born. The quaint little villages in the valleys or on the hillsides of the Bohemian forest they left behind to settle on the prairies of southern Minnesota over 100 years ago. The first stop on our journey is in the Bavarian border town of Fortenwald, where we will visit the Heimat Museum, the Homeland Museum, which has on display many items of the material cultural heritage of our German Bohemian immigrant ancestors. We are now in the market square of Fortenwald, listening to the Glockenspiel, playing the beautiful Böhmerwald Lied, which begins with the words, Es war in Böhmerwald, wo meine Wiege stand. It was in the Bohemian forest where my cradle stood. We now cross the border into Bohemia and stop in the tiny village of Vollmau. That, like so many other border villages, was destroyed by the communists after World War II. The only structure left standing was the little church of St. Anthony of Padua, which has been recently restored. This was home to the Keckelmeyer family. We travel now north through Taus, the gateway to western Bohemia, to Bischofsteinitz, the county seat that was once the summer home of the Bishop of Prague, but after the 30 Years' War, it was gifted to the Austrian family of Trautmannsdorf. Now in Bischofsteinitz, Bischofsgietin, and this is the Trautmannsdorf's castle. Trautmannsdorf were the rulers here since the 30 Years' War. Around the city center, city square. This is the archives for the County of Bischofsteinitz. Hotel Shumava. Here on the City Hall, commemorating the liberation here of Bischofsteinitz, 1945. Next door is a convent. Was turned into a museum after the war. Square again, egg building. Getting close to the church, another view of the city square. You can notice that the buildings here are Baroque tops, and then those that have been modernized. Trautmannsdorf Castle. View of the city church, St. Peter and Paul. We're in the courtyard of the Schloss, of the palace.
Am 27. April 1946, da mussten wir alle hier rein, alle Deutschen hier. Und hier wurde uns alles abgenommen bis auf 50 Kilo. Und damit mit alten Beziehwaggons nach Deutschland.
That time they took the Germans in here and they took all their belongings. And then they gave them a train trip to over Germany.
70 kilos, that's all they could carry.
Just south of Bischofsteinitz was the very old village of Metzling and the church of St. Michael. Monument of the World War I soldiers. In German. Many of these names on the monument are very common in the wall. The church. Bohemia, a village with a huge water-driven grain mill, was home to the Dietrich and Neid families. These were the Neids. Paddockstein's family comes from. House number 25 in Bohemia. House number 23 in Bohemia. Moving further west, we come to the town of Ronsberg and the Church of the Assumption. Ronsberg, a town of about 2,000 inhabitants, was the seat of another noble family that owned many of the neighboring villages. Looking at the Hotel Hubertus, Mount Marxstrasse. I'm not sure, but I think that's where the Kiefners had their, well, it was kind of a dry goods store. the Schloss of the Hodenhofe. The Graf, or the Duke from here, the last one, was very influential and forward-looking into the European Union. It was originally known as Ramsburg from the animals here, rams. Actually, they're boars, and this is part of the family crest from this town. Priest Father Sack. In the Church of the Assumption. Traveling west from Ronsberg, we see on the horizon, perched on the high hill, the Church of St. Wenceslas in the village of Berg. There are all the people from Nachetin, Trohatin, Shilikau at the church. Way up on a high hill, overlooking the neighboring valleys. Many, many, many German graves of Spiro. Helget from Shilikau, Hofors, Hofner, Winschittel, Meyer, Nachetin, Meyer also from Nachetin. Here lies Joseph Grebner, who is the father of my friend Grebner. Trohati numbers 30. This family bought the home from mine when they left. The Kiefner family. Haas from Nachetin. Bones, of course, are set off to the side because there's no one here to take care of them. Many graves of Germans who are families are no longer represented here. But it's almost all German Bohemian families that emigrated to New Ulm. On the site was a fortress going back way to the 14th century, and the church is made of stone. Here's a view of the church, built up on Berg. And German Bohemian Heritage Society has contributed some money to this church for its restoration. This is the church in Berg.
We're not going to be coming back here anymore?
Zamysleme se nad sebou, přiznejme si své hříchy, abychom mohli přistoupit k této mši svaté. Vyznávám se všemohoucímu Bohu a vám. jsi Hospodine Bože celého světa. Z tvé štědrosti jsme přijali chléb, který ti přinášíme. Je to plod země a plod lidské práce. I stane se nám chlebem věčného života.
Požehnaný jsi Bože na věky.
Za vás vydávám. Besonders über Atlantik. Augenblick. Danke schön für Ihr Grüße an euch.
Trohatyn was home to many families who immigrated to the New Ulm area. The Helgets, Zwack, Kiefner, Rothmeyer, Domeyer, Tauer, Sukup, Sellner, Fischer, Gog, Haas, Losleben, Prokash, and Winchittle. Trohatyn had the largest number of immigrants to the New Ulm area of any village. This is Marlene Domeyer's house number 5. Featherbeds hanging out of the window. Beautiful landscaped garden in front. By the square, right across the school, is the former home of my great-grandma, Barbara Kiefner, house number 30 in Trohatyn. And right next door to the Kiefners, would you believe that this is where Joseph Gog was born, the son of Peter Gog? Family immigrated to New Ulm. In fact, one of my Kiefner relatives was a sponsor for one of the Gog baptisms. It was where some of my Catherine Helget and some of the other Helget ancestors that married into the Kiefners here lived. The street was what was probably a school, but not, of course, when my family was here. And it's kind of the city hall now for Trohatyn. Rudolf Vomus, my good friend, taught school in Trohatyn, and his father. The square on the other side of the school is the ancestral home of Rudy Kiefner's family. This was the home of the Zwack family. The tiny village of Nachichin was the ancestral village of my Helget family, as well as the Heinel, Ruby, and Schrepfer families. Here, standing directly in front of the Helget house, is a little shrine, a cross, iron cross, and at the base is marked the year 1869. That's exactly the year that Wenzel Helget immigrated to the U.S. Right in this area Not that house, but this is where the Helgets came from. They immigrated from house number 17. And I'm sure those fences were here when the Helgets were here. Stone fences. House number 17. And it's about in the right spot. If that's the case, this is the house from which Wenzel Helget immigrated. And then George lived in 13, which is around the corner. This house is in the place where I'm in the yard of house number 10, and this might be house number 13 where the Wenzel Helget family originated, George Helget, and in Natchitin. The Rothmeyer house, now the Rothmeyers in Natchitin are the biggest landowners and musicians, and this is their home, which has been restored. Barn in the back. Right across the road is another little farm that's been restored. This is the little chapel right out of Natchitin. On the roof. This is right near Chillicothe, about the highest hill closest to the border. Right from Chillicothe. Going further up the hill, we see, stretched along the road, the houses of Chillicothe, the homes of Tower, Helget, Eckstein, Hammerschmidt, and Gitter. Very poor, and the farmsteads were very small, growing season short, and that's why many of the people immigrated. They just were very, very poor. This is one of the poorest parts of Bohemia. Here's a little wayside monument in Chillicothe. Donated in 1824. There's a Strassendorf with little houses scattered on either side of the road, little farmsteads. A new home. Beautiful, beautiful place, but not a very good place to be making a living. Another beautifully restored home in Chillicothe. And another. These are all summer homes from people living in Prague or Pilsen. It's number 25, but we don't really know if that's the same number. But the Towers lived here, and they lived in house 25. Wouldn't they like to see this one? But it's being restored. New windows and everything. And a house, another summer home coming to be. As we pass over the crest of the hill, we see the beautiful Radbuza River Valley below and come upon the site of the village of Rindel. Rindel was destroyed in 1945 because it was too close to the border, but a memorial marks the site of the village. Rindel was home to the Portners, Hoffmans, Kester, Schrepfer, Helget, and Ubel families. We're on the site of the village of Rindel. Rindel, 1993. Now, Rindel was a stream. All these trees weren't here, obviously. These have all grown up in the last 50 years, but this is the site where the village of Rindel was. And there's some ruins of houses down in the trees. And there's a stream running right through the village. This is where Rindel was. Down the road about 50 meters was an intersection of the trail that goes up to Jungrindel. Up the mountain toward the ruins of the Hirstein fortress stands the tiny village of Jungrindel, the home of the Schweinfurter and Karl Grebner family who immigrated to St. Paul. The Stockholm Monastery was established by the Augustinian monks who brought with them settlers from Bavaria to the Pivon mountain area. They established a number of villages clustered around the monastery and ministered to the material and spiritual needs of the people. The monastery lies mostly in ruins now. Traveling south through the Radbuza River watershed, we come to the site of the Church of St. George in Grafenried. Once a large glassworks was here, but now it is only a memory. The villages of Grafenried, Unger, and Sieg were home to the Dietls and the Schrodels. Just a few kilometers north, we find the site of the tiny village of Hasselberg, home to the Mack and Liebel families. Traveling back north along the tiny Radbuza River, we come to the important crossroads at the village of Weiher, home to the Kretsch and Grebner families. There was a parish church here, and almost everything was destroyed because it was too close to the border, our communist era. And that's probably the road to the cemetery. On this intersection up this way, this is where the homes existed for the Kretsch family, of which are gone. The only buildings left standing were used by the border police. Looking from Weiher, this is looking right up the hill to the area from where Rindel would have stood. It came down into we're down on the Radbuza River Valley. And up that hill was where Rindel stood. Following the little trail north, we come to the forest clearing and the site of the tiny village of Bernstein, the home to the Vogel and Flor families. Just before we get to the Bavarian border, we turn south to the site of the glassworks at Unterhuten, the home to the Bartel, Lindmeyer, Wild, and Martz families. Located directly on the border is the town of Schwarzach, half in Bohemia, half in Bavaria. Bohemian Schwarzach was heavily damaged during World War II and was totally destroyed in 1956. Schwarzach was the home to the Lindmeyer and Wilford families. If you listen carefully, you can hear the 1926 Whoopi John Wilford Band playing their theme song, the Marian Waltz. This is where the Lindmeyer home once stood. Returning to the Weiher crossroads, we turn north along the valley until we come to the trail that leads up the hill to the villages of the Neuboy and Fuchsberg, home to the Ravitzers, Liebel, Gog, Martz, Zeug, and Zeig, and in Fuchsberg to Artie Dietz's family. Finally, after 15 years now, I'm on the road to Neuboy.
Wir haben gestern nachgerätselt. Hilde heißt es. Aber wer das ist?
This is the village where my great-grandfather, Ravitzer, immigrated from in 1869. Going up the hill to Neuboy was the beginning of the Radbuza River, and right here was the Steinemühle.
Mama.
This is where the Church of St. George, where my great-grandfather George Rebitzer had built in his home village a church, a little chapel. He sent the money in 1913, and he invited him to return for the dedication, but he said he'd never go back. Inscription, both in Czech and German. Memory of the Church of Holy George in Neuboy, 1911-1950. On this site stood the school, which of course is no more. And on this site was the Gasthaus, the local restaurant, the hotel. Coming down further now, we come to a fork in the road. And off to the right is the home site of George Rebitzer, so we'll go there in just a minute. At the fork was the firehouse and the fire pond, which is right here. It held the water. Going up to the left is the house, the furthest one on the left. Up, farthest up the hill is house number 6, the house of George Rebitzer. We come very top, house number 6, George Rebitzer's home. This is called the Mauser house, Mauser, and proudly guarding the gate. The entrance is the gate posts. Still here. Wrought iron hasps. Moving back, the right-hand gate post stood the house, and all that's left is some rocks of the foundation. And immediately behind that was the barn for the few animals. And then in the back of the lot was the hay barn, the barn for the straw and hay for the animals. Along the side of the Rebitzer farmstead was a little wash, and this is the Rebitzer spring. And this water was running when George was here as a boy. And it's still here to this day, the Rebitzer spring. No fancy signs here, but this marks the limit of the village of Neuboy. Auf Wiedersehen. If you listen very carefully, you can hear the wind in the trees. The Bohemian wind, or the Böhmische Wind. It flows up and down these valleys. To get to the site of Großgorsching, we can circle back to Weiher or take the footpath just down the valley. This village, like so many others, was destroyed after the war and is gone without a trace. This was home to the Haas, Hausers, and the Sparrows. On the road to Muttersdorf, we stop at the top of the hill and find the village of Wasserau. The Ruby, Tower, and Dauer families called Wasserau home. And one of the few houses here in Masserau. Looking down the valley, we see the steeple of the Church of St. Bartholomew in Muttersdorf. Many immigrants came from Muttersdorf to New Ulm, notably the Grossman, Schnobricks, Saffert, Bauer, Grau, Bayer, Kastner, Wilczek, Hogan, Howers, and the Franz Grofner family. Muttersdorf was a market town with a central square surrounded by farmsteads, the church at one end, the Schloss or residence of the nobleman at the other. Church of St. Bartholomew in Muttersdorf. One time was just a very, very beautiful church inside. It's been partially restored, but unfortunately the restoration is starting to crumble already. The German Bohemian Heritage Society donated $500 towards the new roof. And unfortunately, I think the roof was a little late in coming. The main market of Muttersdorf is lined with beautiful linden trees, which during the communist era were topped, and now they look more like bushes, but the city was known for its beautiful linden trees on either side of the market. The business establishment was once some kind. Number 136, where house 166 used to stay in. House number 59. House number 1, which was labeled the Schloss, where the nobleman had his home. Originally, of course, they ran the mill and everything, but this was his house. House number 4. Of course, all these have been beautifully renovated by people who have money. But that's where it originally stood, house number 4. Empty pace now was 5, 6, 137. House number 7 and 144 in Muttersdorf. This was the home from which my Grossman family immigrated. 1867, 1869. A huge old farmstead. Site number 28. This is the yard between 7 and 144. It's house number 37 in Muttersdorf. See, it's a farmstead. 38. House number 39. Each crest of Muttenin, and if you'll notice the fell up in the top, has miner's tools because there was a copper mine here years and years ago. Many copper miners. The rest of the significance, I'm not sure. 41. This is house number 90 in Muttersdorf, right next door to 91, which was the house of Franz and Anna Grepner. And number 90 has a sheep snout and everything, and I'm sure all the houses along this street looked almost identical. This is where our forefathers worshipped. Statue of the Virgin. St. Joseph statue. Now here is a beautiful statue a few years ago. Has been stolen. On the main altar. The chandelier. The pipe organ. The many melodies that emanated from this church. And the standards in the back. The various societies and guilds in Muttersdorf. Tiefar im Böhmerwald. And in the distance up here is the crypt of the Wiedersberger family. And the Wiedersberger crypt. Very wealthy family. Very influential here in Muttersdorf, but also in many of the towns along the Radbuza River valley developed glass factories in many of them. Schwanenbrückel and Unterhutten, Oberhutten. Andreas Schnobrich. Anna Schlegel. Maria Helget from Rindel. And of course, families that are not here around to take care of their graves, their stones get set off to the side. Check graves are put in their place. Also a Domeyer grave from Muttersdorf. A Schripfer from Rindel. The people from Rindel came to church here in Muttersdorf rather than going on to Berg. It was on this side of the valley. Here is a monument both in Czech and German. And the German translation is
to remember the death of our families, who had to leave in 1946, and then are all the names of the villages that belong to the parish are listed up.
And they are Algramatin, Althutten, Großgrün, Kleingorschin, Schnagelmühle, Pfaffenberg, Putzbühl, Schwanenbrückel, Wasserau, and Rindel. Just northwest of Muttersdorf was the town of Hostau. Largely a Czech town until after the 30 Years' War, it too became part of the Trautmannsdorf's holdings. Village of Hostau is kind of the commercial center for our area. This is the church in Hostau. It had done considerable renovation, but it's starting to show its wear already. You can see it's a large, very large church. Last time we were here, we had a little organ recital on one of our tours, but it has deteriorated. Just north of Hostau was the village of Holubchen, home to the Rees family. Another village in the Hostau area was Amplatz, where the Wilczek and Molden families originated. The town of Heiligenkreuz was one of the original Hoden villages associated with the nearby fortress at Fraumberg. The Hoden were the border guards given special privileges by the king, The Church of the Holy Cross was founded in the 14th century. The villagers from Neuboy, Fuchsburg, and Wistersitz went to Mass here. The Gog and Liebo families can trace their origins to Heiligenkreuz. The church in Heiligenkreuz has been beautifully restored. Has a cross. A sundial on the face of the church. Here is a cart for moving the corpses for funerals. It was a custom in Europe. The bodies were not embalmed, and they were put in this little house, and then people could come and view the body here. And they kept them outside for obvious reasons, and then moved them into the church for funeral, and then over here to the neighboring cemetery for burial. This is the gravestone of a Ravitzer, Joseph Ravitzer from Neuboy number 6. Another view of the church cemetery. It's a huge German section of the cemetery. Regog, discovered on the 26th of October 1913. He was only 18 years old. Here's some Grobners from Fuchsburg. And living in this village as a landlord was the family Lamminger, which was a family that was very much hated by not only the Germans here in Heiligenkreuz, but he also held the land in Taus, Dumazlica, and the Czechs rose up against him after the 30 Years' War and destroyed many of his homes and things. Beautiful old home restored in Heiligenkreuz. Weisensolz, another of the Fraumburg-Hoden towns, is located just east of Heiligenkreuz and is the commercial center of the area. Weisensolz is home to the Dietz, Polta, and Strodel families. The church is dedicated to Mary, Mother of God. The stone bridge over the Radbuza River has 8 large carved statues and is a copy of the famous Charles Bridge in Prague. It was erected between the years 1703 and 1723. Here's the Radbuza River. It started way south near Rindel and made a loop north, and now it's going east. Then it will go south through Bischofsteinitz. A picture of the church in Weisensolz. The Dietzes and several other families came from this town, Weisensolz, just around the corner from Heiligenkreuz, on the railroad, and a very important commercial center. Heiligenkreuz was more the religious, cultural center, and Weisensolz here, the commercial. Pösikau and Zemschen are located just 5 kilometers south of the Fraumburg fortress. They were very important Hoden villages and home to many New Ulm immigrants. The Warta, Goblers, Dietz, Wurschner, Mars, Schlegel, and Prokash families came from Pösikau in Zemschen. Cemetery in Toots, where are buried all the people from Travelogue and Zemschen, the publishers, the Vortas, Spiro, the Schlegel, church in Toots. Here's a Hüttel, and here we find a Goblish from Zemschen. George Lebo from Pussycow. Czechs and Germans lying side by side. Czech and German graves. And even some of the German names have been changed to Czech by adding an ova. Heindelova. The church in Toots. The bell tower has all been restored, but the body of the church hasn't. The village of De Hinton is located a few kilometers east of Toots in Tachau. 1837, George Gog Sr., the grandfather of Anton Gog, sold a family farm in Heiligenkreuz and moved here to De Hinton. When Anton's father, George Jr., returned from military service, he purchased the farm from his father. In 1843, Anton Gog's father moved here to Valk, just a few kilometers north of De Hinton, and married Teresa Heller. Anton Gog was born here in Valk in 1858, and the family immigrated to America in 1873. The stream in Valk that Anton saw many times. And as best we can determine, this is the site of the Gog house in Valk here. It's right across the road from the mill and the stream. There's and here's the mill. A little pilgrimage church chapel that has been in Valk for several hundred years. This is the path that the Gogs took to Pernitz to go to school. This is the school in Pernitz, and that's maybe where Anton went to school. Anna Gog, the older sister of Anton, married Joseph Sellner, who was born here in Pernitz. There's a Winninger, a Lang, a Mages, War Memorial here. Sandler, Baumel, Singer, and Baumel from De Hinton. In the village of Valk, there's a Sandler. In the village of Birken, a Floor, a Hampel, a Bohm, Bilchka. There's the church of Pernitz. A huge Baroque church, and the decorations are very much like Holy Trinity Cathedral in New Ulm. This is where Anton Gog worshipped as a youth. Moving further to the northwest now into Kreis Tachau, we come to the village of Neuhäusel, the home of the Keim and Eckstein families, but also the family of Captain Joseph C. Hofmeister, the famous band leader of the 2nd Regiment Band from New Ulm. The beautiful walled city of Mies with towering town gates, was very rich because of the many silver mines that dotted the banks of the Misa River. The impressive town walls had never been breached. Looking down on the city of Mies. The unique town hall was built in the Renaissance style during the 16th century, the golden age of Mies. Mies is also the administrative center of the county. Moving west of Mies, we come to Mariafels and the Church of St. Lawrence, the home of the Grausum family. There is a large turreted chateau at one end of the village, and a little chapel of the Sorrowful Mother, built by George Grausum in 1882. Nearby is the village of Koshoitz and the ancestral home of the Biebel family. Lizzie Biebel was married to Anton Gog. Just south of the city of Mies is the Cladrau Monastery, which was established by the Benedictine monks from Bavaria in the 12th century. The monastery holdings encompassed a large number of surrounding villages. The monastery, one of the most famous in Bohemia, contained a very large library and art collection. The church, one of the largest Gothic churches in Bohemia, has a very ornate Baroque interior. Reported to be one of the most beautiful Gothic structures in Bohemia, and the inside is heavily Baroque, almost Rococo. Part of the Cladrau Monastery holdings was the village of Kostelzen, the Church of St. John the Worker. This village was home to the Kleckel family. Church, little Gothic church. Nelson, see what I do for you guys. School building. The Kleckel farm was down this way. Beautifully restored farmstead. Another of the Cladrau Monastery holdings was the village of Weshorsh, the home of the Bernick, Kral, and Varachka families. This is a photo of the Bernick family home. Further south we come to Gibien, again a part of the Cladrau holdings and home to the Seifert, Marsh, and Remiger families. This is the site of the Seifert family farm. Traveling west, we come to the village of Honositz. The Stadtherr and Keckstein families came from here. This is the little chapel dedicated to St. Barbara. Around a kind of central square here. Home of Leon Stadtherr. On the main road south of Pilsen, we find Hodischau, a monastery established by the Visitation Sisters in the 12th century. This complex contains a large cloister, library, and beautifully decorated chapel decorated by the sisters. This is looking from Montau towards the cloister. Beautiful sight. Photograph of the cloister as it was. Prieheischen. A village belonging to the Hodischau was Prieheischen, with the Church of the Visitation. This was home to the Mathewitz, Seifert, and Reminger families. Church in Prieheischen. See one of the big Bauernhof here in Prieheischen. Large gate, huge barns. Oberschirkesham, another of the Hodischau monastery villages, was Oberschirkesham, with the Church of St. Martin. The Halle family came from this village. Oberschirkesham. The German grave that has been rehabbed. Family has upgraded the Meyer family.
They kept many miners here. It was not allowed to leave for them. They kept it for the mines and for the gas factory.
And so there are many German families buried here. Our journey now takes us south of the Czech gateway town of Taus to the village of Neumark. Located on the border crossing, once a prosperous market town with numerous industries, it was largely damaged by fire in the mid-1800s and never regained its importance. This was home to the Vinegar and Haas families. Just east of Neumark was the village of Hirschau, called home by the Pritzl, Baumann, and Seidel families. Before the communist era, the mother house of the Bohemian School Sisters of Notre Dame was located here in Hirschau. Just north of Neumark, perched on a high hill, is the tiny village of Kaltenbrunn, home to the Seidel, Forst, and Meidel families. At one time there were 19 homes here, but only a few remain. Going up the hill, we come to the pilgrimage church of St. Wenceslaus. This is the Seidel home, and here is the site of the Michael Meidel family home. Just southeast of the city of Neuern, we come to the market town